All right, a few last odds and ends, tidbits perhaps. These are a couple of random things that have popped up in the past, and I'll do my best to identify which ones are most important to remember. The first one is the idea of a monetary policy rule. And the thought is, because humans are fallible, meaning we make mistakes, wouldn't it be better if we had an algorithm, or basically just a rule, that the central bank followed? So instead of having people at the central bank look at the data and then make a decision based on the data and then implement policy, changing money supply or interest rates, what if we just had one rule that the central bank had to follow? So it prevents people from getting too crazy. It prevents people from encouraging the ups and downs in the economy or the money supply. And then one idea, and it's called the Taylor Rule, not for me, but for a guy who I believe was at Stanford for a long time. The idea was allow the money supply to grow only at the same percentage rate of increase as real GDP. So real GDP goes up by 5%, money supply is allowed to go up by 5%, so that they stay equal all the way through. Would it work? It's hard to say. I think that monetary policy for a complex system like the United States or any other country, even a simple algorithm like this would not work in all circumstances. Just know that people have proposed, given the up and down history of monetary policy in virtually every country, that perhaps we take it out of human hands and we put it into the hands of a formula. This neutrality of money is worth remembering. It goes along with the neoclassical or classical view. And it just states that in the long run, money is neutral. More money will not do anything to output. So if you remember, LRIS is vertical at the level of full employment output. And it doesn't change except when technology changes or improves, when productivity changes or improves, or quantity and quality of factors of production improve. But otherwise, it's vertical. So we can't increase output, but it's possible for the price level to rise. So the thought is, if we have more money in the system, it won't affect output. It'll only affect the price level. So because if we have more money in the system, if people have more money to spend, perhaps they spend more on goods and services. If they spend more on goods and services and bid up the price of goods and services, now firms can afford to pay their workers or pay their input prices or input costs at higher rates. The cumulative effect of assuming flexible prices and flexible wages is that we'll just adjust. So the monetary supply will increase, so will the price level. That's all it is. Money illusion, this typically doesn't show up, but money illusion is just the fact that people get confused. Most people, not everyone, but most people think in nominal terms, which means they take what they see and they believe that that is the actual level. So they see the interest rate offered by a bank for a savings deposit, and they believe that that's the real interest rate. When, as we know, the only way to get the real interest rate is by subtracting expected or actual inflation. So because we can't really know real interest rates in real time, most people just are a little bit lazy, which is understandable, and they just take what they see or what they're told and accept that as what the real interest rate is. So they're conflating, or they're mistaking, the face value, which is the nominal interest rate, what they see, what they read, with the real value, which is what can they actually buy with that value of money. So again, probably not going to show up. If you have questions about it, please ask. This does show up quite frequently, though, the quantity theory of money, and it goes along with the classical view. And it's a formula. Typically, you'll be given, you'll have to plug in for some of the variables and then solve for the equation. But the equation is very straightforward. It's m times v equals p times q, or mv equals pq. And the variables are defined as follows. M is usually equal to the money supply, either m1 or m2. V is the velocity of money. So velocity, you could rearrange the equation to show that it's the ratio of nominal GDP to money supply. Or you could think about it as the number of times a dollar in the economy gets transacted every year. So how quickly is the money moving around the economy? How many transactions is that one unit of currency participating in? So if velocity is high, money is being circulated many, many times, changing hands many, many times. If velocity is low, that means fewer transactions are taking place, and money is moving less quickly throughout the economy, which means probably the economy overall, the level of economic activity is a bit lower. Or, we'll see this in just a second, or the money supply has increased dramatically. So P is the price level on our ASCD diagram, and then Q is real GDP. But if you multiply P times Q, you get nominal GDP. So you're taking real and adjusting it for the price level, so adjusting it back to what it normally would be, or what it is, face value, nominal value. Okay, what does it look like? M equals PQ. Let's say M1 is $2 trillion. V, the number of times that money moves over the course of a year, is 7. And then PQ is equal to 14 million. So 2 times 7 equals 14. And honestly, this approximates the level of difficulty you will encounter on the AP exam. You'll just be given some of the variables you'll be missing, you'll have to solve for them. So velocity has been stable over time, it's typically been growing, and I'll show you a diagram in just a second. Normally, we would assume that the change in the money supply would have an impact on nominal GDP, but recently it hasn't. It's been really strange, and I think a lot of people are questioning monetary policy, and the validity of monetary policy, and what comes next, because the situation we're in right now, unprecedented. We've never had easy money for this long. So what does velocity actually look like? You'll see starting approximately 1955, the ratio between nominal GDP and money supply is growing fairly steadily. Gets a little bumpy. And then you'll see at certain points it decreases. So here, kind of post-Typhoon, the gray indicates a recession. Here indicates financial crisis of 2008, but velocity drops significantly. And then COVID, boom, drops devastatingly. So in each of these situations, a recession generally, psychologically, among other reasons, encourages people to transact less, so velocity of money drops during these times. And during COVID, it fell off a cliff. What comes next? If you could answer that question, child, you would be on your way to millions, billions perhaps. Talk more about it next week.